So, welcome to the new podcast. It's called Positive Vibes Sobriety. Um, and being a recovery, I tend to overthink things. So let's see how it goes. Um, so I'm sitting here with Pastor Phil, aka the Chief. And do you want to say a little something about like your story?
Well, yeah, I'm just, first off, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell a little bit of my story, to bring a little faith, hope, and love to somebody else who might be hurting right now. And basically, my story is I grew up like many families. It all started good, and then until it got bad. And our home that I was in, there was an abusive relationship my mom and dad had. And so my dad left home with 6 kids, and my mom went to work, and we were running amok. And so the time I was 12 years old till the time I was 30 years old, it was just a life of drugs and crime and anger and pissed off and upset and, looking for somebody to blame all the time. I was looking for love in all the wrong places, like so many of us. And I experimented, I started off like most people, blowing with some weed and huffing on some glue and taking pills, mixing it with alcohol, and went through the psychedelics during the hippie days and did the LSD and the mushrooms and all those things. But I finally got to a place doing that drug that I never thought I would ever do, and that's heroin. I just had heard nothing but terrible things about it. But sure enough, one day somebody said, "Hey, let's try it one time." And so for me, it was one of those, first time I tried it, I loved knowing that I had not a problem in the world after I shot that up. And it was, what a great feeling that is. And even in my mind now, just knowing that just sticking that needle in your arm can make all your problems disappear for the moment.
Yeah.
For the moment. But little did I know what the payday would be. And the old saying, you play, you got to pay. You do the crime, you do the time. And sure enough, in my escapades of crime, I got busted. And at 30 years old, got sentenced to a 10-year sentence in California State Prison System. And it was the worst thing that ever happened in my life. But at the same time, it gave me time to pump the brakes, stop the running and gunning, stop all the I got to do this, got to do that, and thinking that if I owned this or if I went here, or that it would change my life. I got a chance to be sat down and just really, for the first time, look for help. And like the 12-step program teaches, I had to admit that I had a problem, and I knew I was sick and tired. I knew that I'd ruined every relationship with my mom, my dad, my brothers, my sister. I'd robbed, stole from all of them. I realized that the addiction to drugs had taken my whole life. I didn't care about anything for fun other than getting wasted on opiates. And so I can remember when people, a couple times when I overdosed and people would bring me back, I would, they seemed to think they did something wonderful. For me, I didn't want to come back. Why'd you bring me back? I wish you would let me die. And I just had no hope whatsoever in my life. And then I remember it was one of the officers at Chino State Prison who said, "Hey, they got a chapel service going on." And just to get out of my cell, just to go down and listen to something else, different than all the chitter chatter from all the inmates, I went down to that chapel service and I got to hear about God. And I didn't trust God. I didn't trust anybody, but I did what I felt in my mind that day. I said, okay, I've tried drugs, I've tried women, I've tried money. now I'm going to just try God, see what happens. So I made a decision that day back in 1977, early then, to give my life to God. And then I started going to AA meetings, chapel meetings, any kind of meetings, self-help meetings. I volunteered for therapy groups in prison. I was willing to do anything to find myself. I was lost, confused, didn't know which way to go, couldn't make a good decision. And my family members, everybody was happy I was locked away because now their things were safe from me robbing them and hurting their lives. And so it was just it turned into be the greatest library, the greatest school. And I didn't really care about getting released. The last thing I want to do is get let go back in the streets and then come back in. So that was the beginning of a whole brand new journey for me. Here I am, 30 years old, and man, I'm ready for a new life. And I didn't care about going on the streets. Man, I was happy to be locked up.
So is that when did you start the whole Set Free ministry?
Well, one of the things that I realized in my life when I was locked up and had plenty of time to think is I realized I'm a natural born leader. And at a young age, I can remember in my neighborhood, we lived on Ollie Street. And so me and some of my friends, we started a group called the Ollie Street Crew. And we were tagging things, and we were, we had an orange grove across the street from my house. So we were getting oranges, throwing them at cars. And we were being little vandals. So we called our group the Ollie Street Crew. Now this group, the Ollie Street Crew, was the beginning. I knew I was an influencer. I could influence people to do some rotten stuff. And then we started, after not just doing drugs, but then we got a little group together selling drugs. And then as we got into drugs, we made a little crew, where we went out taking LSD in the mountains and being all crazy and stuff like that. And then as I got a little older, I started a little group. We had a group called The Boys. It was a motorcycle crew. And we'd ride our motorcycles around causing havoc all over the place. But I was always starting something, always starting a group, always getting other people going, influencing them. So here I am in prison. Prison is no joke. It's a rough place. And I'm a young buck who liked to fight at the time. And so I started a group called God's Gang. Here I give my life to God, but I wasn't your regular Christian type character. I started a crew, a God's Gang crew, and I had a few fellows with me, and we were ready to throw down, use mop heads, whatever we could, while we were locked up. So we were rough around the edges, but that's where I realized that I could help lead people. I could help people guide them. So I found me a counselor. I found me a mentor. I found me a sponsor. I found some people to lead me, to teach me so I could lead others. So I spent the next couple of years locked up. I ended up having a whole crew, and I had me a good mentor, good hardcore mentor, a volunteer inmate named Herb Sokol, and this guy just mentored me how to be strong for God, but no wimp, no weakling. And so the first weekend I got released from prison, I was asked to speak at a church to give my testimony. And so right coming out of the gate from prison, they gave me $200 and said, find your way. I got out there, and I didn't hesitate. I went to church that weekend, share my story, and then I ended up marrying the love of my life. She married me in prison. She saw the difference it had made in my life. And so we came down to Southern California, moved into her mom and dad's house, and I needed to find a job, so I got me a job at 7-Eleven, working graveyard shift, making nickels and dimes, trying to support the children I was starting to have. And next thing you know, I'm finding a better job. But I had this little thing inside of me that kept saying, I want you to, go help other people like yourself. You were a no good, dirty, thieving, lying, cheating, drug addict. I want you to go help others just like yourself. So I had no idea I'd be starting a ministry or a church or anything like that. I just wanted to help others. So sure enough, I needed some training. So I went to a church and I asked the pastor, and he sent me to a place called Pacific Coast Baptist Bible College. And so I go up to that school there, and the rules were you had to wear a suit and tie to go to school. And I never wore no suit and tie, none of that kind of stuff, but okay, dude. And then I had some people that believed in me, paid for me to go to school there. So next thing you know, I'm going to Bible college, and I'm learning the ways of how to do ministry, how to be a pastor someday, and all this kind of stuff. And I can remember, just like it was yesterday, that one of the professors, a professor of psychology at the Bible college, he had a church in Anaheim, my hometown. And he says, I have a job opening for you. And I said, oh, yeah, man, okay, good deal. What is it? And he says it's called extended daycare worker. Babies, in other words, another word for it would be babysitter. They had a Christian school, hundreds of kids, and they wanted me to babysit them in the morning before school, recess, lunch, and after school. And it was very humbling for me, but hey, man, I was ready. And then I just kept learning, and then I became a bus director, and then I became a youth leader. Then I became assistant pastor. Then I became one of the co-pastors of the church. And next thing you know, after I'd been out for a few years, I started, I had an ideal how I thought church should be. Because I thought churches were cool, but every time I bring all the kind of people I would want, the girls weren't dressed right, people were high, people were drunk, they were just rough, real rough people I brought in church. So people in the church was a little nervous of that crowd. And people go, you ought to start your own group. So in 1982, February, I started what was called Set Free Christian Church. And I started in a buddy of mine's living room, and then got a little office, then got a little warehouse. And every time I told people about God and helped them get off of drugs, I took them into my home. So next thing I go, I got 30 people living in my home. And with my kids and my wife, and we're helping people, we're going for it. And then I leased another home, filling it up with people. I call it Beans and Rice and Jesus Christ. And then I took my crew and I told them we're going to go out to the neighborhoods, the gang neighborhoods, everywhere we go where Pizza Man don't deliver. We want to go to the rough spots and the hard spots. And so Jesus said, follow me and I'll make you to become fishers of men. So I went fishing for men, but I wasn't catching the tuna or the marlin or the fancy fish. I was catching the carp, the bottom feeders. But those were my kind of people. So next thing, the church is just growing and growing. More people are coming, more problems, more people. I had drug detox trailers where I had in the desert, and I brought people in, detoxed them off of heroin, speed, all that kind of stuff. And then in our little warehouse, we rented more space. And next thing you know, I got these people that came over to my church house named Paul and Jan Crouch. And these people owned a TV network called Trinity Broadcasting Network. And I'd heard about it before, but it was worldwide, gigantic TV. And back in the 90s, TV was the thing. It was before all the social media day. Nobody had cameras, it was a television set. And so they asked me to be on their program. So here I am at this time, I'm got long hair and I got tattoos and I'm riding a Harley Davidson and doing all this stuff. And they took me on this television network. It was basically a bunch of old white preachers. And so I was a different looking commodity on this. And people responded well to it. They go, man, if God will save that loser looking guy, I'll send my husband there. I'll send my kids there. And people started sending people from all over the place there. And the church started getting bigger. It went from a few people, 50, 60 people, to a few thousand people. I mean, it just blew up. And then the people who own the TV network said, hey, we'd like you to have your own television program. So sure enough, they produced every Friday night, 11:30, Set Free had its own TV program that went around the world. It was just unreal. I was riding a wave of nothing could be better. But in life, I found out that success is much more difficult to handle than failure. It's easy to be an F up. It's easy to be a loser. It's easy to mess up things and say, yeah, I suck. You know, that doesn't take any energy or any effort. It's just a natural negative thing inside of us, human being. But here I was at the top of the heap, and pride goes before the fall. And I just, at that time, didn't realize what a blessed, wonderful, everything that I had. And I just messed it up, and I said, I'm out of here. And so back in 1993, you know, I said goodbye to close to 8,000 people who were members of our church. And I was at a place, so here, I'd spent the last decade doing great, but I was at a place where I needed a wake-up call. You know, I needed a checkup from the neck up, because I was having a whole lot of stinking thinking. And it seems like we can have it all and still want something that we shouldn't have. And so it reminded me of Adam and Eve in paradise. They had all this beautiful paradise. God said, don't touch that one tree. And what did they do?
They touched it.
They touched it. And here I was. I had a paradise. I had everything going on. God says, hey, just don't do that one thing. And I went and did that one thing. I know some people will go, what was that one thing? Read my book. And so next thing you know, I touched that one thing, and man, that big old thing collapsed. Boom! I hit bottom, and I found out there's a bottom below any bottom anybody may think they have. And so I went down for the count, and I found out what any of us do when we're broken is we look for a place to hide, we go run, we start blaming everybody else. I was wearing shirts that said Christians suck, another shirt that said, Lord, protect me from your followers, because I was trying to blame everybody around me like it was their fault. You know, come to realize, you know, that one in the mirror, that I look at her, that's a character. You got to watch out for her. So here I went, and I left town, took my family, and we moved to Venice Beach. I thought I'd hide out over Venice Beach. There's 100,000 freaks there every day. I figured I'd get in with the rest of the freaks. But while I was living in Venice Beach, and just mad at God, bitter, not better. I was in a public bathroom, and somebody knocked on the bathroom door. They go, Pastor Phil, is that you in there? And I go, what? Hey, could you pray for me? The last thing I want to do is pray for anybody. But I said, okay. And then the next day, I had a whole group still moving me. They all lived with me in Venice there. They wouldn't leave me, a whole group of people. I had this one guy, Chip, who said, hey man, are we still mad at God today? And I go, yeah, you know, so I realized I was a leader, and I influenced people. And, you know, I could get them to go to the left or the right, whatever it might be. And so here I was, mad at God, bitter, upset at the world, blaming everybody else, and I get a phone call from a guy named Pastor Tommy Barnett in Arizona. Got a big mega church, and he says, Phil, I know all the wonderful things you've done before. I need you to help me build a place called the LA International Church and Dream Center. And I go, first off, I was amazed that a man of his stature, his credibility, would even know a character like me. And secondly, that he would actually give a rip to want to help me. He's a valley walker. And when you're going through the valley, he's the guy that walked there with you. And he says, I need your help. And at that time, it was a miracle that anybody would need my help. I didn't feel like I could help anybody. But man, I took him up on his offer, said, hey, whatever I can do, I'll just stand and greet people at the door. I don't need no title or no position. And he moved me and my family to downtown LA, Hollywood area. And when we started with him, a place called the LA International Church and Dream Center, which is one of the biggest inner city ministries in the world today. It's powerful, it's strong. So here I was, like I said, it's just, now I'm back, man, back on top. But, you know, sometimes there's other negative sayings like every good thing must come to an end. And next thing you know, I know some of my past bad choices caught up with me. You know, the wreckage of our past.
Yep.
Sure enough, I had some lawsuits, and so I had to move back to Orange County. And I had 3 women used to come to my church, said I was a cult leader, you know, and I took their stuff and this kind of thing like that. And so I had to go to court for the next couple of years. And after that was all done, they threw all that out, you know. I got back up and doing Set Free again, got set free, rocking and rolling again. And so I know how to make comebacks. I know how to be knocked down and come back and go for it again. And like I said, I'm a leader, so I get a crew and we get going. And so here we are doing our Set Free thing. We're going good, but once again, pride gets going on. And I got myself a crew of guys, motorcycle club crew of guys. And we're riding around and we're just the coolest looking group, I think, you know. And once again, like I said, pride goes before the fall. And I let pride back in again. People go, man, didn't you know better? Well, I should have known better, but you know, I'm not an easy learner.
Yeah.
And so here I am in 2008. And take my crew and we're out on a ride. We end up going to a bar. We end up getting into a bar fight. And next thing you know, man, I am arrested, locked up on $1 million bail, attempted murder charges, you name it. And this is Pastor Phil, Dr. Phil, all this kind of stuff, but prideful Phil. And so I go to court. People thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison, but God blessed me and I got out of that, you know. And that was in 2008. That was 15 years ago. And I decided, you know what? Man, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to just helping addicts. And so in 2008, like I said, I started the movement of the Magic House where we're at right now. And the magic is Jesus. And I work with addicts 7 days a week. I'm an addiction specialist now, you know. I got my doctorate of divinity degree, and for the last 15 years, since 2008 to 2022 here, I have not moved to the left or right. I've kept going forward, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, kept moving forward. This has been the last 15 years, best years of my life. But that was after all the stuff that I had to go through. I had to go through many wake-up calls. And when I got arrested that last time, I was 60 years old, so I was no young pup there. But I was running and gunning still. I just wasn't using the drugs. You know, you can stop that. It isn't the drugs or the alcohol that's the problem. You know, it's the stinking thinking. You know, it's the hard attitude. So I got to get this place, the Magic House, and we got a state license as a detox center. My house next door, we got that as an IOP, intensive outpatient center. And I started helping people start drug detoxes. And so that's been my focus the last 15 years. And now we have our Sunday night meetings that we do, a little AA, a little NA, and a whole lot of Jesus A. And then we help fentanyl awareness. You know, we help people. I got a church house, you know, Magic Church House, where we got a crew of rascals that live there. And so that's what's going on today. You know, I'm on my last inning of life here, and I just want to spend the rest of my time trying to help others.
You kind of sound like Bill Wilson a little bit. A little bit. All the stuff that he dragged Lois through.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. He would get an idea and, you know, like, oh, he'd get this bright idea and then he'd just pick up his family and moved and like everywhere he went. And of course, again, you know, he always got tempted and he'd pick up that drink again one more time and just went down. His life took a shamble.
I get a lot of big ideals. That's why I said there's good ideals and then there's God ideals. But yeah, no. So this is the best days of my life. I love what I'm doing. I love the people I work with, and just giving it my all to go out swinging for the fence. You know.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for joining. We'll get better at this, but yes. So on to the next. Yeah. still learning this.
Good. That's it. That's exactly it.
I don't know. I just had this idea to do it, and I was like, all right.
That's great.
So,
That's a good one. Yeah. No. Hey, anytime we can, somebody will listen somewhere.
right?
You know what I mean? And that's perfect.
Oh, I guess I can.